Sure. This week, we have on Marco Renda, a licensed medical marijuana grower, a publisher and editor-in-chief for Treating Yourself magazine. He's going to be discussing his upcoming event, Treating Yourself Expo, and how he got started with publishing. And I believe he also is the owner of Vape on the Lake. We're very excited to have him on. Mr. Renda, how are you today? I've heard it's been a long day for you, sir.
Oh, an extremely long day. My day started at 3 a.m. this morning Eastern time. And that's the norm for me 7 days a week.
You're publisher and editor-in-chief of Treating Yourself magazine, and as well as owner of Vape on the Lake. Do you want to kind of just tell us a little bit about kind of what your multi-jobs are, I guess? Well,
I publish 2 bi-monthly publications, Treating Yourself and Glass Culture. I put on the Treating Yourself Expo. I own and operate a glass distribution company called Not Just Marbles, and a vapor lounge called Vape on the Lake. I'm very active in the cannabis community. I push for full legalization for everyone, not just medical patients, for obvious reasons. And I've been doing this for the past 13 years. I'm not new. I'm 53 years old. I'm not some, 23-year-old guy just trying to make money off of cannabis legalization. I'm a patient. I've been using cannabis for, I've been using cannabis really since I was 11 years old, on a recreational level. But I've been using it on a medical level for over 20 years. There were 7 patients that took the government on in Canada that forced them to distribute cannabis. It was the HITSIG versus Regina. That was the case that was called. And I was one of those 7 patients. And that's the reason why we have cannabis distributed throughout Canada to this today.
Your Canadian government, do they still have to provide you with marijuana? How is that going?
Well, unlike the U.S. federal government program, which has been in existence for 31 years, which a lot of Americans still to this day don't even know exists, I have one of those tins, which was given to me from Irv Rosenfeld when he came up to Canada to speak at one of my conferences. Nice. So I have one of those tins. The difference here in Canada is the government does not distribute for free. The patient has to pay the government $150 plus taxes per ounce. Now, most patients are on a disability, and never mind afford to pay for their medicine, they're having a hard time paying for their rent and putting food on the table. The cannabis is not covered by any medical program here.
Okay. Right. So it makes it that much tougher, exactly. In your mind, I know a fair amount about the laws concerning marijuana here in the States, but I'm relatively naive to how Canadian law works. Can you relate kind of Canadian law to American law in terms of some of the big differences that you guys experience versus us Americans?
Sure, I'd be more than happy to. In Canada here, it's a federal program. Unlike in the U.S., it's a state program. The only difference is that with your federal program, you have maybe 4 patients left in the program that they were grandfathered in. Right. Here in Canada, we're now at 20,000 people plus. We have a program here where patients can either grow for themselves, they get a license to grow for themselves, or designate a grower to grow for them. Now, because I'm so busy, I have a designated grower, and now we have what's equivalent to the DEA, CIA in the U.S. is the RCMP, which is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police here in Canada. Well, just recently, the RCMP got a package that was coming to me with 8 pounds of cannabis from my grower in BC using UPS. They turned around and stopped the package. Well, they had to return it. I had my grower go to the police department, to the police dispatchment there, and they had to hand over 8 pounds of marijuana.
So the RCMP handed over the 8 pounds back to the grower?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's a great photo op. That's a great photo op shot. Yeah.
And so were you eventually, are you going to get your medicine, or did you get it?
Oh, I got it back just last week on Friday. It was delivered to me.
Ah, that's incredible. That's always, I love hearing the good stories of little things like that let you know at least some progress.
But I waited a month. So I lost 1 month of my medicine.
So I guess you're right. I mean, at first I thought, this is a great story about how the government has to give back marijuana, but just the fact that you still have to deal with this, Mr. Renda, that's ridiculous. The fact that that's still going on and there are still issues like that is, it sucks.
The funny part is this. When the police go and raid people and arrest people, they're always weighing the packaging. So when I contacted the RCMP and demanded them to return my medicine, they says, "You're over your limit." I says, "Excuse me?" I says, "What are you talking about?" I says, "First of all," I says, because they tried to say that the reason that they confiscated it was because there was a smell. It's illegal you're not supposed to send packages that smell just for safety reasons. Well, there was no smell because the cannabis was put into Ziploc bags. Those Ziploc bags was then vacuum sealed, and then that vacuum sealed bag was vacuum sealed again in another bag.
Wow. Right, and they were probably both wiped down with alcohol, But
So, but the thing is, they weighed all the packaging, and they tried to tell me that I was a half a kilo over my weight that I was allowed. I told them to dump everything out of the packaging to weigh it on its own, because that's the proper way to weigh things. And they said to me, no, that it's still overweight. Well, the funny thing is that they lied. They never opened the packaging. When my designated grower went to pick everything up, it was still in its original packaging.
Right. Just ridiculous. I
said to them, charge me with possession. Take me to. I want criminal charges laid against me, and they refused to do that because when you take them to court, the judges here, the judicial system here in Canada, unlike the U.S., they're on the patient side. We're in the U.S. that they're voted in, and they have to worry about what the constituents say and what their government say. Well, the federal government here in Canada was ordered by the Supreme Court of Canada to put this program in place. The government has to listen to the courts, not the courts have to listen to the government. Right.
That's great. I wish it was a little different here. Now, how far along do you think Canada is to seeing full recreational legalization?
Well, if the Conservative government has their way and move forward and remove this medical program, I'd say within the next 2 years, you would see the Supreme Court of Canada step in and remove the law. Back in 2000, in 1999, the Supreme Court ordered the federal government to put this in place and say that there had to be a program that's workable. It's still, to this day, 13 years later, it's still not workable.
Right.
But there's still a program. Where now they're saying that they want to remove the program. That's where the Supreme Court will step in and say, okay, you no longer have a law.
Right, exactly. Now, being the owner of Vape on the Lake, how do you avoid confrontation with the law? How do they just kind of have an understanding that what you're doing is appropriate? How does that work?
Well, first of all, Vape on the Lake is not the first vapor lounge in Toronto or in Canada. The Hot Box Cafe, Rotorama, was the very first one in Toronto. The only difference is with me is when I opened Vape on the Lake, I did so in a manner that I invited the drug squad, the police force. I have an open door policy for them to come in at any time without search warrants. There is no sales being done. People can come in, pay their $5 at the door, and use the facilities. We have large screen TVs, we have vaporizers, we have everything there. It's like a big ass living room. It's comfortable. It's handicapped accessible. Now, 90% of the staff of Vape on the Lake are licensed exemptees, meaning
what does that mean?
that means that they're federally licensed to hold. They have to possess any amount of cannabis on their possession. Like for instance, I'm allowed to carry on my possession 8 pounds at any time.
Wow. That sounds amazing.
Basically, that's 1 month's supply of my medicine is what I'm allowed. So what happens is that we tell people when they come into the lounge, just be discreet. Sure, we're going to have police walk in. They're going to harass someone if they see a pile of pot on a table anywhere. That's just common sense.
Right.
So we've never had anyone arrested in our lounge. We've been open a year and a half. We've never had any issues. As a matter of fact, we know when we have the police that come in, the uniformed police come in, we know they're rookies and they're being hazed. Because they come in, they look around, and they say, we were told, we were told to ask questions, and we said, by who? Your sergeant? Don't you know that the staff sergeant knows about here? That the lead, the head detective, the drug squad knows that we're here? I said, you're being hazed. And when they see this, they realize that they have been hazed because there are no issues. Never,
One thing we're saying, is sometimes people accuse you that Vape on the Lake could potentially bring in, criminals or prostitution or whatever. And of course, what's really going to bring that in is, liquor stores and, regular stores, unfortunately, just kind of facilitate that. And studies were done in Rand by the Rand Corporation, and what they've noticed is that the dispensaries here in California, crime around that area either stays the same or goes a little bit down. And from experience, I'm sure with the different places that you've seen in Canada and definitely the places I've seen in California, there's always a really great security system in place. And I feel that that's where I feel safest is around a dispensary or around a place like Vape on the Lake. Those places are usually a lot safer than, other places. And then, too, you had talked about, the idea of, doing other drugs and kind of, being sober from those drugs for a while. That's, I'm sure that's not just you. A lot of people think that marijuana can be a stepping stone drug, but in reality, it's an exit drug. A lot of people are able to be helped off of becoming, if they were an alcoholic or harder drugs. A lot of times what helps them get off those drugs is marijuana, and they're able to kind of live a great life doing that. So I certainly hear you on both those fronts. That makes a lot of sense.
Marijuana is not the gateway. The gateway is a drug dealer.
Right.
That's the gateway.
Oh, I like that. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, whether it's booze.
The lounge. You want to hear something funny? I am surrounded by bars. Vape on the Lake is surrounded by bars, and 3 doors east of Vape on the Lake is a rub and tug. So where does the prostitution come from? It's a rub and tug, not the vapor lounge.
Right, of course. Exactly.
Okay? And when I had the police there, they said, you are the first owner of Vapor Lounge to invite us. We appreciate it because we're never allowed into these places unless there's a complaint. And he says, and this is from the lead detective. They said, as long as you keep it indoors, you will never have any issues from us. Like, exactly. I said to the guys, give your head a shake. Why would anybody be wanting to go and smoke a joint outside when they could be sitting in here to do it in comfort?
Right.
There's people that you see outside are smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about the expo. It's going to be next weekend, right?
It's upcoming. It's this coming weekend, actually.
Yeah.
And it's phenomenal. We've already doubled last year's online ticket sales.
Nice.
In all of last year, we had 20,000 advanced ticket sales, $20,000 advanced ticket sales. This year, we haven't even cut off. Tomorrow's the cutoff date for online ticket sales, but we've already hit $40,000.
That's awesome.
So we've doubled last year's. Never ever heard of it in a trade or consumer show that's ever been done.
Now, what's it going to be all about? Tell us a little bit about what's going to be going on. Apparently, it's going to have a huge vapor lounge for everybody to go to.
This event, the venue where this event is held, is the same venue where they had the G20 Summit. This is a government building, it's a government facility, where we've been putting on this event for the past 4 years. We have seed sales happening. We have glass blowing demonstrations. We have hydroponic companies there. We have the seed breeders themselves there and selling their genetics. We have speakers like Dr. William Courtney speaking, Kristen Courtney speaking.
Yeah,
we have lawyers speaking. You know, like, this is a full-fledged, proper expo. This blows away any event that excuse the expression, that High Times ever does in North America or Holland. Okay? This isn't a stoner event. We welcome everyone. If you want to get educated, you want to help to make cannabis legalized, this is a type of event that needs to be held all over North America. We need to have the proper people there, like doctors, like lawyers, educating people, making the non-user comfortable in coming into a facility to get the information.
That's great.
That is why I have it in a government facility. If people are afraid of coming out of the closet, they're not going to be afraid of coming out of the closet to go into a government building.
I wouldn't think so. No.
Well, maybe a little.
Forget about having these thought rallies in bars, nightclubs, in dives.
Yeah.
Have it in proper facilities. Listen, Treating Yourself, we've been around for 9 years. We've been doing rallies, but we've also been doing women's shows, home shows, health shows. We've been doing events across Canada that are non-cannabis related, and we're the only cannabis booth in these events, and we're now getting invited back year after year because we're educating people. People are coming back not only to us but to show management, thanking them for having the balls to have something there that is out of you know, that taking the blinders off.
Yeah.
The biggest complaint that we've had from vendors is when I started this 10 years ago and doing the event is I'd be doing trimming demonstrations, showing how to hang, and I had vendors next to me that didn't want to be next to me because of the smell. We were the most active booth in a home show. We had vendors bringing their clients to our booth. This is how you change people's minds. You don't go out and blow smoke in people's faces. You just make information available to them. Eliminate the propaganda that the pharmaceutical industries put out, the lobbyists put out to the federal government, that they want them to keep taking these harmful pharmaceutical drugs that people die on a daily basis from accidental overdose. Nobody in the history of mankind has ever died from a cannabis use overdose.
Sure, and not to mention the prescription pill
using
addiction.
Cannabis.
Right, and not to mention, I mean, even if you don't die from prescription pills, you could still be addicted to them and have them ruin your life. Whereas, you know, you could have a problem with marijuana, but it's very manageable, and it's not going to, you know, it'd be very hard for marijuana to, I think, completely ruin your life. It's a lot easier to seek treatment, I would say, for, you know, any type of problem with that as opposed to prescription drugs. When you look at Canadians as a whole, Mr. Renda, does it seem like, you know, for us, the Gallup polls just recently showed, I think a year or two ago, that for the first time ever, over 50% of Americans support full recreational legalization of marijuana. Are there any other studies like that in Canada that kind of show that the tide is turning and that a majority of Canadians want full recreational use?
Well, the studies that have always been done here was for the decriminalization and taxation. And 10 years ago, there was a study done by the Fraser Institute. And they said 10 years ago that if the federal government were to legalize regulated tax, cannabis, 10 years ago that the government could generate $3 billion a year, minimum, in taxes.
Wow. Okay. That's a good... That
was
like
10 years ago. And the Senate recommended that they decriminalize. It's the politicians, it's the lobbyists, it's all to do with the pulp and paper industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the textile industry, and it all began with William Randolph Hearst, DuPont. You know, it's because of those people is where we're at today with the illegal use. The people can't even grow hemp, for crying out loud. The Constitution of the United States of America was written on hemp paper. The first American flag was made out of hemp.
Exactly. I know all too well what you're talking about, and it's absolutely ridiculous what a handful of people were able to do. In the early 1900s, to be able to use basically propaganda to get exactly what they wanted, and so here we are now stuck.
Because nobody could really question it back then. You know, we didn't have, you couldn't Google it or check the research or whatever else. We took stuff at more of its face value, and as Mr. Renda said, that amazing with Hearst, he just shifted it all, to his, and that's why it's not changing now, because the people who are making money throughout this system don't want to see it changed either. So, and that's, I'm sure, being through the politicians and whatever else. I wanted to say I'm a reader of your magazine, sir, and I think it's a great magazine. And I noticed in your current issue, if I could take a couple of quick questions on that. I see your article, which was interesting, on federal court's first ruling in 20 years keeps marijuana in Schedule 1. Now, we said earlier that you said you were a few years away from doing that. Now, we have 18 states here. I didn't know if you've seen any research or whatever else. Do you think if we get to 25, 26 states, where we're in the majority of the states in favor of it, that we'll see that
happen here in America?
Well, I don't think 26 states is going to do it, I'll be honest. I think the U.S. needs 30 states to push it over. You are on track, not just on a medical side, but, on other factors, looking at other factors on the legalization of cannabis, on the rescheduling of cannabis. But one thing that I would like for your listeners to maybe take an understanding is that there's been studies done not just in the U.S. and Canada, but worldwide. Now, why are all these studies that are being funded by governments pulled once the studies are founded that there's positive use, where the government has always been looking for these studies to be showing the negative aspects of cannabis, but all their studies has always provided that the opposite.
Right. Even if they're trying to
why
look
is
for something.
The American government putting the patent? Why are they patenting cannabis? Why is the U.S. government patenting cannabis?
Yep. Well, because they know. They literally patented it because it had neuroprotective properties in it that could be used for medical value. And here it is, just complete, like you said, complete and total hypocrisy on our end.
You understand, now they're patenting every cannabinoid, every single structure of the cannabis plant. They're not just going after, now they're going after all of aspects of the plant because they don't want anyone to have the extract. This is something, it's a plant, it's a God-given herb. Nobody owns the right to it. No pharmaceutical company owns the right to it. No government owns the right to it. It belongs to humanity.
Right, but if we keep imprisoning those people who do use it, the government gets an extra, we have to pay $46,000 roughly per prisoner to house them. So these private prisons make an incredible amount of money per prisoner, and what better prisoner to have than somebody who's not an actual criminal, who's somebody who just wants to smoke marijuana or, got really involved with it, and suddenly now they're behind bars, and now we're paying thousands of dollars for them to live there. So I think, money is certainly the incentive of why we keep it illegal. And, of course, the federal government doesn't want to see their funding, especially the DEA, go way down once they can't justify these search and seizures and, going in on raids and all that. So, they're just trying to hold out as long as they can because they don't have to change the law. They just have to enforce it. So they're waiting on us, the people, to try to finally make a difference, and we're getting there. Otherwise, they're going to fight it until they have to, even if they know it's a lie.
Think of Al Capone. Alcohol was illegal for how many years? The prohibition of alcohol.
Exactly, and he made his money.
It's just a matter of time if the government gets their head out of their ass and looks at the billions of dollars that can be generated from the cannabis use, the billions of dollars that can be saved from stopping putting people in prison.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And the health care. Forget about, we have cannabis, there's things all over the internet, cannabis cures cancer. Well, I got an issue with this because, listen, I'm a patient, and I believe cannabis is useful for many ailments. But like any individual, you know, what works for one individual won't necessarily work for another. And cannabis can help many ailments, but it's not a cure-all. Cannabis cannot cure all forms of cancer.
No,
cannabis
of course.
does indeed cure various forms of cancer. But to go out and say cannabis cures all forms of cancer, that brings us back. This is where people are missing, is that when we're making these exaggerated claims of everything, people do not listen because it's snake oil.
Yeah, and I would think that those people who say that it's a cure-all are, I would hope, few and far between. But there are always going to be people like that who are misrepresenting what's going on. Somebody I'd like to bring on to our show is Julia. She is the person who is in charge of the petermcwilliams.org page. He was, of course, a big advocate of marijuana.
Oh, no problem. Julia's a lovely person. I look forward to seeing her and hearing her again at the expo. And her friend Jerry that comes with her and helps her out, another fine gentleman. You know, there's many people in this movement that are extremely well. And we all don't have to get along with one another, but we're all fighting for the same thing.
That's it.
You know, everybody has their own opinions and thoughts, and we're all entitled to it. And we all need to try and understand and respect one another as individuals. We all have our issues.
So at the end of the day, would you say that at the end of the day, you and Mark Emery are in the same boat when it comes to trying to fight the same fight?
Of course. But we attack it on two different levels. He has his way of activism, and I have mine.
Talk about it. You know, I only know Mark Emery from the random, bits and clips that I've seen on the internet and seen him on stuff, and so I take him at face value. I think he certainly seems like a great supporter of the whole movement. How do you think his kind of positions differ from the way you differ from them?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say Mark Emery and I have really never seen eye to eye, but I've respected Mark Emery for what he's done in Canada. He was the first one to have, cannabis publications be available, the Sunday shopping. There's a lot of good things that Mark Emery has done.
So then what's the issue?
Well, the issue is the style of I don't believe in the disrespectful ways of doing things. I don't believe in blowing smoke in people's faces. I don't believe in the civil disobedience and disrespecting the police department. There's ways of doing things and getting people on your side. I don't believe in pissing people off to get on my side. I want to educate people to be on our side.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, but civil disobedience, I think that there is a place for it. I'm not defending Mark Emery by any means, but I'm just saying, you think he perhaps has gone overboard, or is perhaps making people angry where he doesn't need to be? Or?
It's more the age range. I guess I'm really getting at. It's more gearing to the teenagers and the vulnerable. Is that better?
Sure, okay.
Me, I aim at educating adults.
Right.
Those that make a difference, taxpayers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not the taxpayers' children.
Yeah. But everybody needs to get educated in one form or another, and I think, I think that what both of you do is great. So I hope that, I hope that you guys kind of are able to do your own thing, and he's able to fight his fight. Of course, he's he's in jail right now in the United States, and you're able to do your thing with the Treating Yourself Expo. So regardless, I certainly understand where you're coming from.
I give Mark Emery's company for the past 3 years a free booth in Activism Alley to do their thing. And I do that for all organizations. I don't work with just organizations that do things my way. Because that's, I don't know, okay. That's BS. You can't change the world, and it's being a dictator. I'm not a dictator. Okay? The Expo is there to have everyone to have a voice. The Expo is there to build a bridge amongst everyone in our community, so people could come and see and choose who they want to deal with, choose who they want to speak with, and choose what information they want to take home with them.
That's great. I think that's what yours does.
It's not Marco Renda Expo. It's a Treating Yourself Expo. And Treating Yourself Expo is bridging the gap amongst all.
And
like I said, I have my opinion, and I'm entitled to it. Mark Emery has his opinion, and he's entitled to it.
Exactly.
We're all, at the end of the day, we're all working towards the same goal. Towards legalization.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's all that matters.
Well, that's great. I think that's the way it should be, and I hope you both can progress and move forward the way you want. I think we are able to get Julia on the show tonight. Hey, Julia, are you there?
Yes, hi. It's very hard to hear. It's hard to. Okay, now I can hear you. Okay.
A little better?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think because we had 2 lines, yeah. Or was that something? Okay.
So are you going to be going to the expo, Julia? Are you excited?
I'm totally excited. I can't wait.
Oh, good. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Mr. Marco is really good to me. He lets me share his booth and sell PeterMcWilliams.org shirts and tell people about Peter and I'm one of the featured guest speakers. So I'm really excited about that. I'm so excited that I'm stuttering. Sorry.
Well,
I'm sure you're going to have a great time. And I remember the last time you came on, you had a bunch of great things to talk about. Just with Peter McWilliams in general. So what's going on in your neck of the woods? How's the whole activism thing going? What's in store for you nowadays?
Well, I have to confess I haven't been able to hear the whole entire beginning of your program, so I missed every single thing y'all said. So I really wish I could comment on it intelligently, but I didn't hear anything until you said, hey, here's Julia. It's like, oh, burners.
No problem. Well, hey, I mean, Mr. Renda was talking about everything under the sun and how everything's going with him and Treating Yourself Expo, so he's excited to have that happen. So you and Mr. Renda have met before and are kind of are friends and have seen each other in the past?
Yes. I don't know how I met Mr. Marco. I call him Mr. Marco because if I, respect somebody, I call him by their first name and put a Mr. or Mrs. attached.
Nice.
That's how you know if I like you. But Mr. Marco, I don't remember how I met him actually, but I went to his expo last year for the very first time, and I was really surprised because for 3 days almost, like 2 days out of the 3, he was walking around in a PeterMcWilliams.org shirt, and it was just such an honor because so many people sell so many shirts there, and it's like, wow, he picked mine.
That's cool.
That is
cool, and I was able to speak there about Peter, and it was amazing how many Canadians, the patients, were really, really interested in Peter's story because on the back of his shirt, it says nausea is an unsolved problem of medicine, and marijuana is the finest anti-nausea medication known to science. And I can't tell you how many patients walked up and saw that quote and said, this is me, this is my life. And I was able to use that quote and tell them, okay, this is about Peter, and he's like you, and it was just really cool. And I'm sorry I'm rambling, but I'm a little nervous.
Oh, that's okay. Hey. Well, you're doing great.
Okay.
You're doing
you are.
I don't know. I just think my goal is to speak about Peter and educate people about his life and his activism. He all on his own. He self-published over 40 books, and
Wow.
5 of them became bestsellers, New York Times bestsellers. And he even catered to Canadians. On the back of one of his books, Ain't Nobody's Business If You Do, it says $9.95, and then in Canada it's much, much more. so he knew his audience, but he got real successful, and he started speaking out, and because he actually got really ill, he got AIDS and cancer, and he found that medical cannabis was the only thing that kept all his medications down. He was on a whole slew of medications, and he was throwing up, almost every minute practically. I mean, can you imagine living like that, throwing up every day, all day long, and not having a life?
And what's crazy is that
Yeah.
Well, everybody I know that's over 70, whether it's my grandparents or all these old people, they always have a cocktail of prescription pills that they have to take every day. And as people who live through that all the time, we think nothing of it. We think, oh, that's just, older people having to take their pills. That's just how it is. But, I mean, that's pretty insane that they have to take all these drugs all the time, and we think, oh, that's just normal. But then you throw in a perfectly natural drug like marijuana, and people go, whoa, hold on a second, what's this all about? And it's just, it should be the other way around. We should be questioning, all these random prescription pills that we, are new to the market, whereas opposed to marijuana, it's been around forever, and we already know it works. So it's just crazy.
I totally agree. I've wondered why they have all these commercials. Like, they have these depressed people, and they're talking about Cymbalta helps. Depression hurts, and they have all these people, and they're really, really miserable. And then they're on the drugs, and they're all walking around all happy, walking their dogs, and these huge grins on their faces, living their life. And on the bottom of the screen flashes all the side effects, including this might cause you to have suicidal feelings.
Right.
And I'm just like, what is up with that? Where's the sense in that? And I think that, cannabis has been so demonized by whoever, the press, the government, whoever, that, people are so afraid of using it, and they'd rather go to the tried and true prescription drugs that are making them zombies, because that's ridiculous. What they know.
Yeah.
They're afraid of what they don't know.
You know what I love about this? Is Julia is not a cannabis user.
Yes, right.
Here you have someone speaking towards cannabis use who doesn't use cannabis. It was great. I love it. That's
what's so great about it. I remember last show. Yeah, it's so good to hear people who don't actually use it really approve of it, because I think those people a lot of times can sway the public a lot more than the people who do.
Exactly.
She has no motive.
That's the credibility. Right.
Yeah.
I guess I represent the people that you're trying to get your point across to.
Right.
I'm part of those people, I guess, and some people in the pot community, they've kind of took their noses up at me, and they're like, oh, you're not one of us, you're not a pot person, and I just think that's crazy, because, it's like I'm fighting the same fight you are fighting,
Yeah, right. No, you don't need those people. That's ridiculous. Mr. Renda, are you familiar with Mr. Peter McWilliams? How did you find out about him?
Well, actually, I was online, and I was just, on Facebook, actually, is how it happened. And one of my friends posted some information about Peter McWilliams, and I invited Julia to come up and share his story.
That's really cool.
And that's how it all started. Thank God for the internet.
I'm glad you remember, because I couldn't remember how we met.
Well, that's awesome, because he certainly seems like an incredible person who should be remembered, and it's nice to have somebody like you to be able to kind of support what he believed in, and he just seemed like a brilliant person. So to be able to have him still influence us, I think is amazing.
And the thing is that I'm here in Canada, and we're the publication is a Canadian publication, but we cater to people around the world, and we give a voice to people around the world, and that's what makes the difference. Like, cannabis is illegal in Australia, including for medicinal purposes, and they just recently put a gentleman, Tony Bauer, in jail, who's been helping patients throughout Australia.
That's cool.
I was just told this last week that I've been awarded an award for what I've been doing to help educate Australians, and it's the first time this award's been given to someone outside of Australia, and it's
really
by
wow.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. Indigenous natives, and also the white, and because and so now the award is with the elders, and it's in process of being shipped to me here in Canada. So people like Julia, there's people like her that we need people like Julia, because it's people like her that give the message across that it's innocent. Listen, she's a sweet, innocent girl. I love her to bits. It's people like her that we need. It's the non-user, and that's why I say by going to home shows, travel shows, health shows, and educating people and getting them on side. That's what's going to make a difference to us. And that's not just here in Canada. That's worldwide.
Right.
And Julia has a lot of followers worldwide, not just in the United States.
That's so cool.
You're making me blush. And I snort when I laugh, so it's not really attractive.
Well, first of all, Mr. Renda, congratulations. That's great. I think that I would feel so honored if I heard, that somewhere, halfway around the world they're, giving me an award. So that's going to be a tremendous feeling. And I guess this is kind of an odd question, but the idea of as the world kind of gets its head wrapped around marijuana, not only in a medical sense but a recreational sense, will we have to deal with issues like the Single Convention Treaty? The Single Convention Treaty. Do we really have to care about these United Nations treaties that technically mandates, medical or whatever, just general marijuana laws? Do we really have to care about that stuff?
No, and I'm going to give you a great example. In Europe, the majority of Europe, they don't have a medical marijuana or a recreational marijuana program in place. Okay. In Europe, because of the European Union now, someone in Holland with a cannabis prescription can go to a country like France and not get arrested for using it, even though it's highly illegal in France. It's called the Schenker Treaty. The Schenker Treaty. And it's countries honoring other countries' medical patients. If this can be done in Europe, why in the hell can't it be done elsewhere?
Right.
Why can't other countries honor other countries? Listen, if you have a prescription for Demerol or OxyContin, you can fly all over the world with your prescription.
Right.
Why can't medical cannabis patients do the same? Here's a good thing. Look at in the United States. You have 52 states. Well, you sure as hell better not be flying from California to Florida with it. How many states do you cross?
Right.
Exactly.
Well, you can't.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
This is something that really needs to be addressed. The UN, again, the UN is run by who? The banks.
Right.
Who runs the banks? The Rockefellers. It's all to do with money and greed. And I believe this wholeheartedly, once the judicial system in every country gets support from their citizens, let the citizens decide. Look at Portugal. I'll give you one country, Portugal. They decriminalized all drugs, not just cannabis, all drugs.
That's
over 10 years ago now, okay? Everybody was saying, there's going to be an epidemic of drug use. Drug use has gone down. Crime rate has gone down.
Exactly. I remember
that should say something.
It should.
It should.
You know what? And we bring it up, and it's.
And we don't. I don't remember reading anything about that. Yeah, that's true. So in 10 years they've gone. Huh.
Yeah,
10 years.
Yeah, and I mean, but even people like Richard Branson, who's the owner of Virgin Mobile Records, who's a billionaire, he's part of the drug war policy, and he brings up issues like that. So hopefully, rich people like him can kind of help promote that kind of stuff and get the word out. But like you said, it's all money driven and policy driven, and I think people like you and me and, Julia and Ron, we're all a little bit more forward thinking than maybe perhaps the average American citizen, at least, and it's just going to take time. I think it's just a matter of time.
No,
thank you. I'd like to. We only have about a minute left, so I'd like to thank you all for coming on the show before we go.
Sorry. How many decades have it been rah, freedom, legalized, didn't get us anywhere? Once we started through the medical program and getting proof of medical proof, the tide is changing. They can't hide scientific facts.
Exactly. And you know what? But the thing is, scientific fact, though, has been going on for a long time, too. And now people are just finally starting to actually listen to it and adhere to it. So for a while, people weren't even caring about that. But I think you're right. I think that's really what's going to make the change. So
we didn't have the internet back then. We do now.
I know. That's right.
Exactly. Well, thank you both so much for coming on, Julia.